Yo, I am a super Michael Jackson fan, but I got to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about the Michael movie that just came out. Real ones know. Let's get to it.
Real ones know that we getting money. Real ones know, yeah, now we getting money.
Yo, welcome back to a Real Ones Know Georgia Roll Mo, back with the Michael movie review. Now, the critics were trashing the movie. There was a lot of things. There were a lot of people that declined being in the movie, as we know: Janet Jackson, Reby Jackson, Randy Jackson, Diana Ross. Huge figures, very important to the story. Nonetheless, they got the movie done, and we're about to get into the review. The movie, Jaafar Jackson played his uncle, Michael Jackson. He's a good. He did a good job. He looks a lot like him. Um, the casting for Michael was great. Coleman Domingo played Joe Jackson. Did a good job. They got the makeup. They got the everything right. Looks a lot like Joe. Looks a lot like Joe. Nia Long played Miss Catherine Jackson. Did a good job. Hit it right on the spot. Pause. Very good. But the two main characters in the movie is Michael Jackson and his father Joe Jackson. I would have loved if they had been able to get Janet in the movie, or with her declining being a part of the movie, I still felt like they should have had, a person in the movie playing her. Same as with Diana Ross, very important part of Michael Jackson's story. Diana Ross, with the first album that the Jacksons did, it was Diana Ross presents the Jackson Five. Even if she declined to be in the movie, they still legally can depict them in the movie, as long as they're not defaming their character. So just to have them even as a placeholder in the movie, there was a couple of things that I took some issue with. I get into the bad first. The With the movie, with the childhood was very short. He didn't have a lot of interaction with his brothers in the movie. I would have loved to see him having interaction with his brothers, the dynamic of him and his brothers in the movie. It would have been great, especially with Jermaine, the oldest brother. That would have been great. Him and Marlon, that would have been a great to see the dynamics of him and his brothers. We didn't see that in the movie. I don't want to give too many spoilers. I think with Michael Jackson's life, it was such an open book. It's kind of hard to spoil some stuff. So I'll try not to give too many spoilers, but I would have loved to see that a little more. Uh, Again, the Diana Ross thing, she wasn't in the movie. Janet wasn't in the movie. She didn't have to have a huge part in the movie, just to have her there in the movie, just present. It would have been good because they had a lot of kids, with not being able to see the whole family dynamic, to see how many kids they actually had. It it's if you know the full story, it's kind of like, ah man, damn, I wish I had saw that. When the making of the Thriller album, that was good. When I would have liked to see the the dynamic with him and Quincy Jones a little more, because if you kind of know the story, him and Quincy clashed on Thriller, they clashed on Bad, with the making of those albums, with the direction they were trying to go. Um, a lot of the sounds that they went with, they clashed on them. I would have loved to see that. The 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 main focus of the movie was Michael and his dad. And the one thing I didn't like about it, it seemed like they really did a lot to villainize Joe. Even though they said Joe was very strict, he was very disciplinarian, and he, I guess he would, what they would call today, beat the kids. But back in those days, that was regular. That was typical. You beat your kids, you whip them. So I didn't care for that so much. But in terms of the graphics, or the dance moves. Jafar did a great job. He got the same tone as Michael. He looks a lot like Michael. And I came across some of his music. I found a song that he did about 6, 7 years ago that he dropped. He sounded like Michael. He sounded just like Michael. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was his little thing. So, but only I think such a good casting to have him as the main character of Michael, because for that family, you could tell that they have a certain tone or pitch that they speak with, sing with, and I feel like only a person that was a blood relative would be able to capture a lot of those things and a lot of those mannerisms that Mike had. So I thought he did a great job with Joe Jackson. They kind of painted a picture of him as to be like the villain of the movie, and they didn't go into depth enough about the final concert that he did with his brothers. Um, he didn't want the story is deeper than what they portrayed it, with him and his dad clashing and him not wanting to perform. If you look up and research the story, he had been clashing with his brothers. Like they all were clashing with each other because Michael was the biggest artist in the world. He just dropped the biggest album ever at that point and went on tour with his brothers. That was kind of unheard of. We had never seen anything. Well, I wasn't around then, but nobody had ever seen anything like that before. When the hugest artist in the world and he goes and does a tour, puts out the biggest album of all time, and goes and does a tour with his group. That's kind of unheard of. So I wish they would have dug into that pause a little bit more and got the dynamics of him and his brothers in the story. And one thing that I noticed that Jermaine Jackson was producer and his son Jafar played Michael, but there was no interaction of no speak. They spoke of Jermaine maybe once or twice, but Jermaine didn't have a speaking role at all. Jermaine had a big album that came out around that time. I would have loved to see, you know, how did Michael react or treat his brother after his brother put out a good album and that did well, that sold well. He had some hits. I would have liked to see that. So I think they missed the mark a little bit on that. I don't. And Jermaine was actually a producer on the movie, so he he could have gave him the green light to add that. I don't know who wrote the script. I didn't check into it. I don't know what all was in the script. I know they took a lot of stuff out of the movie, especially towards the part with dealing with the kids. They didn't want to have. I think there was a clause with the settlement that he did with the first people that accused him that they couldn't be depicted in any documentaries or movies in the future or whatnot. So they didn't have that part added in. But all in all, I think the movie was a pretty good movie. It's done so well, it's broken some records. I guess we'll definitely get a part two. That'll be very interesting to see, where they go with it because they ended the movie on bad. So I kind of feel like maybe they could start it out and maybe they could show the dynamic with Michael and Quincy clashing to make bad, because that was the last album they worked together with. And I think that, they had such a big fallout. I don't want to say fallout, but they clashed so much creatively. They ended up being the last time they worked together. So I would love to see that. Man, I wish they could have got Diana Ross in the movie. I would have loved to see, exactly the dynamic that they had, because we found out that Michael was in love with Diana Ross. He said she had his nose wide open, so that would have been good to see, you know, what made him like that. What was the relationship like, you know? So all in all, I think I would have to give the movie I would give it an 8 with what they had to work with, because as again, like I said, once again, Janet not being in the movie and Diana Ross not being in the movie, them not being able to touch on those accusations and kind of showing like what really was going on and debunking a lot of the stuff that happened, because there were a lot of lies that were told with that particular, case where they did a settlement because Michael was such a big artist. he didn't want to have that just in the media because, as we saw, he never got convicted of nothing. Um, Never found no evidence. The FBI followed him for 10 years. They couldn't find anything on him, and but people still will use that to tarnish his name and his reputation. So you can understand why he would make a settlement at that particular time. He was the biggest artist in the world. I think when he was dealing with the nose jobs, the nose surgeries, he got those done. I think he had more than one. I'm not sure when he had them, but I would have liked to see, what was the thought process behind getting multiple nose surgeries, and when his skin with the vitiligo, when it started being spotty, they didn't really show, what he did in terms of bleaching or whatnot, or how did he do it, because I think he did Thriller, and when he came back for Bad, he was light. He was very light, and it was like, oh man, who is this? And his nose was super different. So it would have been great to see all of that, but I guess they would leave it for the second movie, which would be a good movie. Hopefully they'll be able to nail it, and hopefully they'll get more people to be able to participate, people that are very vital to the movie. Because and another thing that I think they left out was his relationship with his mom. I would like to see him interact with his mom more, because Michael, spoke so highly of his mother. He loved his mom so much. I would have loved that. So it was a couple of things that I didn't particularly care for in terms of the story, which I know the story already. So you kind of watching it to see how the people portray all of these figures or whatnot. But and if they'll have some details in the movie that we didn't kind of know about, which again, with the dynamic with his brothers, I would like to see that. The What really happened with the tour, with them ending, with him saying this was it for the family, with doing shows with the family, what really happened, and not just demonizing and villainizing Joe Jackson, because you know Joe Jackson, Michael, I quote, said Joe Jackson was a genius. Yeah, he was tough and he was stern. All the brothers said he was stern, but he said, but some of them said they felt like he had to be, and he was that way for a reason. You got to remember, they were growing up doing Jim Crow, doing segregation right before the Civil Rights Act was passed. So he grew up in a different time. He's from the South. I think he was from Arkansas, and they were living in Indiana. So, and Michael's mom is from Alabama. So these people came from the deep South, and they were in Indiana, which the Klan, if I'm not mistaken, that became the capital for the Klan, the state of Indiana. So they were dealing with some different times, and it was very common for fathers to be tougher on their kids, because you know any mistake that was made could have been the last mistake. So they were stern, and yeah, they would whip their kids more, and they would be rougher on their kids. And I know one statement that he made early in the movie where he said, y'all are black, little black kids, y'all gotta be perfect. Like y'all gotta, you can't make no mistakes. If I'm paraphrasing that right now, but that was a real thing back then. So a lot of people kind of looked at Joe and felt like Joe was just this tough, he was a monster, but he really made or birthed two of the two generational talents. The greatest male, maybe greatest artist of all time, greatest performer in Michael Jackson, and then Janet is probably the greatest female artist and performer of all time. She's up there. She's up there in the top five, arguably number one. So to birth two generational talents and nurture them and bring them up to be these superstars, like super duper stars with timeless hits and classics, and they're um the highest selling artist of all time. That's not common. So he had to, be a certain way to get that greatness out of those kids. And we have to give him an applause. A lot of people want to demonize Joe, but I understand Joe. Tell Joe that Mo knows. Real ones know that Joe, you had to do what you had to do, Joe. You know, So that's it for the review. I give the movie an 8 out of 10. I think I'm gonna stay at 8 out of 10. I don't want, even though with the criticism that I had, the good, bad, the ugly, the good was outweighed the bad. So I gotta go with an 8. I gotta go with an 8. Real ones know George Romo. Stay locked in with the channel. Like, share, subscribe, and follow us on all social media platforms at Real Ones No underscore. We out. One.
From the mud, now we way up. Count it up to the day up. Real ones never change up. We just stack it, get our weight up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Real ones know